Howdy, folks.
How's it going?
We got into this was a good one about we did some psychedelic conversation.
Yeah, it's that time of the year.
It is that time of year. We did talk about seasonal stuff, didn't we?
Yeah, we talked about the seasons, talked about circadian rhythms and such.
Seasonal affective disorder.
A little bit.
Just that we just brushed on that. We didn't talk too much about that. And then what else? We got into something good.
Talked about
pumpkins.
We talked about pumpkins, talked about reading. I thought it was a good conversation.
This is a good place to start. Tell your friends to start on this one.
Enjoy, guys. Hi, I'm Kellen.
Hey, I'm Beau.
And you're listening to the Transplants podcast.
You know, like, oh, you made it to India instead, or whatever. I'll just walk, you know?
Once you're in that spaceship, you're not coming back.
Have you ever, or when you were younger, did you ever get delusional?
We potentially could be the people who are doing the work to terraform these planets. I can't really tell you a story that's going to be meaningful or
Yes.
in any way.
Right. Is it Wednesday? Because if it's not Wednesday, you go in the fucking basement.
How's it going?
Doing pretty good. How you doing, Beau?
I'm doing well. How's Sober October going for you?
Give me 1 second to get into a comfortable recording position,
Okay.
and then I'll let you know.
Then you'll let me know.
Yeah, all right.
That looks a lot better. You look comfy.
Yeah, I'm feeling comfy. Yeah. I'm fully mirroring you. I got the one leg up.
The one leg up is good.
Yeah, it's good.
It's counterbalancing
Something like
the
that.
blood or something, you know.
Yeah, but Sober October, I'm happy it's almost over. You know, what is it? It's the 20th today or something like that. So we got 11 days till we can break.
I think it's the 21st.
Even better, we got 10 days till we can break.
My Sober October ends on Halloween.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at.
I don't think that applies. 31 days is kind of odd for half the year.
And
so
31 days, that one day, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Correct.
You know?
Yes.
I can do 30 days, but at 31, I'm just gonna be strung out. I'm gonna be a mess. So.
There was a time that you were on the edge though. You were around day 16 or something. You were like, I might dip in.
Yeah, when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to, you're not over the hill yet. You know, there's so many more days. It's like, oh my God, can I really get through another 2 weeks of this? But then once you're over that, you're through the main body of it, and it's like, all right, I've done this much already. Let's just roll down the hill. And it's way chiller being past that halfway point for sure.
Yeah, I get you on that. And you really have respect for how long a month really is.
Yeah, for sure. Especially since I haven't been sedated for the whole 30 days.
Right. And everything just blends into another thing. You're like, October.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah, for sure.
But at least we've been having nice weather.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend we got nice weather. We had a weekend of straight, I'm not going to say hell because it was cold.
Right.
It's the opposite of hell.
Right.
But
you're right, though. After I said that, I was like, no, we haven't had great weather. It's been absolutely shitty for 2 weeks. And finally, we got good weather. So.
Yeah, no, this weekend was definitely a nice little part in the clouds showing us that the sun still loves us up here in Montana.
It was crystal clear.
It was definitely crystal clear.
That's how clear it was. Where did you go again? What was the name of your trip?
Well, the ridge that I ended up on is unnamed, but I hiked up Indian Ridge trying to get to Beacon Point, which is definitely beautiful. But Indian Ridge is pretty well defined when you see it from the trailhead. So or not the trailhead, but the point in the trail where I ended up getting lost. And so I'm kind of kicking myself for getting lost because I should have just gone to the very defined mountainous ridge. That probably would have been a good guess instead of heading up the sketchy scree face that I did head up, but
it was more traveled, so you felt comfortable doing that.
Yeah, exactly. There were more footprints in the snow, so
sorry, I like it in the day when the snow at night rather, when the snow starts to really crystallize, and if you walk really carefully, you can just walk on top like you got snowshoes.
Yeah,
but then you step one wrong and you're like knee deep. You're not wearing gaiters or anything. You just have snow in your shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can't get out of that one hole and like get back up on top. It's just from there, it's just hole. So
yeah, you're trying to push so hard on that other foot to pull your other foot in, that one just sinks down, and then
Yes.
it's just a feedback loop from there. You're just stuck in the world of post holes.
Yeah, that's a lot of effort.
Yeah, for sure. Though yesterday when I was hiking, it was like 62 degrees out and the snow was super, super moist. So I was pretty much just fully, the snow wasn't that deep. I was about shin deep for the last 5 miles of my hike, and it was wet. Like when I started out hiking yesterday, not when I started out hiking, but when I started out on the snow, I was being really bashful, making sure to step right in the other footprints that I saw, trying not to get my feet all wet with slush. But then as the day progressed and I was just in deep snow, I just accepted that my feet were going to look like I was in the trenches in World War I.
Yeah.
I just accepted it.
Especially on the way down.
Yeah. On the way down, each of those footprints that I had gone down or gone up had just turned into little puddles of water. So every time I would step in it, it was just like, and so I was definitely the wettest boy yesterday for sure.
Were you?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was definitely less than ideal, I would say.
What's the thing on top of that mountain, that really defined peak? Is it an observation deck, or is it just like the top of the chairlift, or what?
Oh, that's the top of the tram at Lone Peak in Big Sky.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Is it a chalet? Is there anything to do in there, or is it just that's just where the top is?
I'm not really sure what goes down there. I think it might just be an observation deck. All I know is that you can take the tram to the top of Lone Peak. I don't know.
But that's the name of the peak. What was the other peak that you were telling me about?
Galton Peak, the tallest peak in the Spanish Peaks.
Now I don't know which one I'm thinking of. Is there a taller one than that other one?
Taller than Lone Peak or taller than Galton?
See, I've never been in the Spanish Peaks, so this is all new to me. But I remember driving through the Big Sky, kind of resorty area, and then there's that little man-made lake, or probably like a reservoir where they have all those blue houses with the white roofs.
Yeah.
And then you look further up, and there's a very defined, a very defined like peak, like that you'd see in Oregon or something, just like not part of a ridge. It's just like triangular.
That was probably Lone Peak.
And that's got a little thing
tram
up
at
on
the top.
Mhm.
That's Lone Peak.
So there's a taller peak than that.
I'm not sure if Lone Peak is actually part of the Spanish Peaks wilderness, but if it is, then it's definitely shorter than Galton Peak, because I know the Galton Peak is the tallest.
Wow. Well, where I was in Beehive Basin, you can't see outside of it and in any other direction other than the way you came in. Mm-hmm. So you can see Lone Peak, but I didn't see any taller. But I was thinking, that's a tall mountain right there.
Yeah.
Because it goes from base level all the way up. It's not part of a ridge. Like Sacagawea doesn't look that tall.
Right.
Because it's just part of the Bridgers, But
it's just a little like blip kind of on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was cool to see a mountain like that.
Yeah, it's like something from like Lord of the Rings. You know?
Yeah, hell yeah. It looks like Mount Hood.
Yeah.
If you've seen that one. That one's a pretty cool looking mountain. Or it just sits alone, So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Or like, what is the actual mountain called in The Hobbit?
Mordor? No.
Mordor's a country.
Mordor's a country. Sorry, wait. The volcano?
No, that's in Lord of the Rings.
What are you talking about?
In The Hobbit.
In The Hobbit. I don't know. I haven't read or seen it.
You haven't read or seen The Hobbit? Wow.
I saw them all in Russian.
Did you have any comprehension of what was going on?
No, I had no idea what was going on, and there weren't any subtitles. So I was just like, I'm so at a loss here. Now they're riding goats, and they're like, coming in hot. And I saw all of them. So then there was weren't there 3 or 2?
There are 3.
Yeah, and then the big Smaug, which they said with like an American accent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I could barely sit through all 3 of those Hobbit movies, seeing them in English. I'm really surprised that you got through it in a language that you didn't understand.
Well, when you don't understand anything in Russia, it's just comforting to just see images that you kind of like. That was it was kind of a comfort there. But I don't remember the mountain.
The mountain that Smaug lives in, I think it might have been called the Lonely Mountain. Or something
Really?
like
Oh, where
that.
the gold is?
Yeah, where they go to get the eye of Agamotto or whatever.
I wouldn't know. It was all just gibberish to me. It's communist propaganda for all I'm concerned.
But that's just why I was kind of relating it, because Lone Peak, the Lonely Mountain, it's kind of...
Do you think there's a dragon underneath or something?
Maybe we should go find out.
We should do a little quest.
To go find the dragon.
Yeah. We should smelt some rings, and then when we get down there, we just throw them in the ring and pretend like we saved the world or something.
Yeah, I'm always down for things like that. They're very ritualistic, whether or not they have an actual purpose. If it feels like you're doing something meaningful, I'm definitely into it.
So do you celebrate any holidays that are just, or do any sort of ritualistic things now?
Not regularly. I like to do yoga and take mushrooms during the summer solstice.
Oh, okay.
But that's about it.
Did you do it this year?
This year I didn't do it because I was in Tahoe, and I just didn't have access.
Did I ever tell you what happened when I took the mushrooms you gave me?
You told me you went out in a field by Stadium View, but I didn't hear.
Oh, no, that was the second day.
Okay.
So you had given me a healthy jar of mushrooms.
Yeah,
it was a very generous gift.
Probably like 7 or 8 grams.
For anybody who doesn't know, it was a generous gift. I'll just say that. And I thought, me being experienced, that I was gonna, I'll just take a little bit now and a little bit. But you even gave me, you're like, ritualistically gave me this warning, like right before you left. You're like, but take warning, son. Like only take like 1 cap or something like that. If you're gonna just do it lightly. You told me to kind of proceed with caution.
Yeah.
So I took like 4 stems and 3
I think
caps.
I told you to do it with love in your heart.
I think you did. Yeah, you did. And I had to bury some stones or something like that outside. Anyway, so I was still in school for the summer semester, and it was my final test. No, it wasn't my final test, but it was like one of the last tests in my math class, which I'm not a very good math student as it is. And I had been doing okay. And so this test was going to put me over the edge. Like I was either going to do pretty well and pass it to class, or if I did not do well in this test, I was going to fail. So of course I took mushrooms.
Before the test?
For the test. But I was thinking, well, I'm just going to microdose, but I took a healthy amount, not knowing, or just kind of ignoring your advice. So I'm sitting in class, and I had taken them, and I took them with some coffee, which is a great combination. Coffee and mushrooms is one of my favorite combinations.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's the opposite of mushrooms and weed.
I feel that. And the mushrooms already kind of have a little bit of a sedating effect to them. So I could see how coffee would be
so
good.
You get a little buzzy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm sitting there, it's quiet in the class, and I start to like sweat, and I'm thinking, oh, so that's what I'm going to feel while I do this test. So I'm flipping through the different pages and stuff, and now I'm like starting to like take that deep breath, and like it's starting to slow down a little bit. And by the end of this test, I could not comprehend what I was looking at, because I was seeing through the paper, like there was just thin paper or whatever. So I was seeing the problems on the other side. I was getting so confused because the X's and the square roots are kind of jiggling around a little bit, and I was getting a little nervous that people were like, that I was like breathing heavy or something like that. And people were gonna know. So now I'm the last one in the room, and there's no one else but me and the teacher, and I'm like fuck, like, oh God,
You still haven't answered the first question.
Right. No, but I did bounce back and forth between like first page, last page, just like, okay, this was a fucking stupid idea. I'm going to fail this test. And so I stood up to hand the teacher my test when I thought I was finished. I guess I was done. I was like, okay, there's nothing more I can do. I guess I'm going to take it as an L. I stood up and I put my hand out to hand it to the teacher. And then I just realized I was standing like 7 feet away from her. So after like a quick moment of that, I was like, God, I look stupid. And everything's going on in my head, because I was like starting to trip now. It wasn't just a microdose. So I like push it towards her, and when I let go of the paper, my hands were so sweaty, it was just like see-through, from all the moisture. Clammy hands, and I'm like, thank you. And then I walked out of the room. And I walked home, and I was just like, fuck it. Turns out I got like a 92 on that test. It was the best test I took all year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. I did study, so it wasn't like a fluke, but it was like I didn't do bad, you know. So and I did considerably better than I did for the rest of the semester. So
maybe you should have followed that lead for the rest of your
yes. Well, then my issue was I took the second batch of them the next day. It was too soon. My body was still already trying to get rid of the other stuff, so it was like nah. And I had like that upcoming where you're like, oh, I'm about to trip, and then it just never really got further than that. But it was nice because then the rest of the day I was just in a great mood, and you know.
Yeah, then you kind of get that like microdose effect where you just feel kind of on the ball. You just feel like you're in some sort of groove.
Yeah, for sure.
Ethereally.
And I think another thing is where you kind of just accept whatever level of psychedelic experience you're about to have.
Yeah.
You just accept it. If it's going to be little, you don't wish it was more. Or if it's too strong, you don't wish it was less. You're just kind of like, this is what it is, you know?
I feel like that's the mood or attitude you have to go into at any time that you're taking any of these substances. If you're expecting more than what you get, you can't let yourself be disappointed by it because it's going to ruin your experience. And if it gets more intense than you bargained for, you gotta accept that at the same time. You always have to go in accepting whatever experience you're going to have. And I think that's one of the big lessons of psychedelics, because I think that applies to regular life as well. It lets you kind of give in more to whatever your experience is. So it's like, okay, this is what it is. This is what's happening. I'm going to live in my experience, and I'm going to try and enjoy it.
I like that.
You know?
I like that for a motif of life itself.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Didn't you have a really intense experience in your room? Maybe you already spoke about that on here, but
I've had two pretty intense experiences in my room. I had one this is the first time that I ever tried it alone. And this was only my second time ever taking mushrooms. I probably took like 4 grams, and I just did it in my room because I didn't want to share with my roommate, and I didn't want to be out there tripping by myself and just being the one guy who's on this level, you know? But I remember doing it in my room, and I just had the most intense like sense of impending doom and loneliness. I remember every time that I've tripped, there's like one sentence that I can like remember hearing in my mind that like sticks out kind of as the lesson from that experience. And from that experience, I remember, and it always sounds so stupid when I say it out loud, but the one sentence was that like no one will ever understand what it's like to be me, and I will never understand what it's like to be anybody else. Like no matter how close that I ever get with someone, there's always going to be that separation, and that we're two different consciousnesses with different experiences, and nobody can ever fully understand another human being. I remember after thinking about that, I remember just feeling the most intense sense of loneliness that I've ever felt in my entire life.
Really?
It was really, really intense. It was
during the trip or after?
During the trip. I remember sitting in the fetal position on my bed, like crying about this, because I just felt like I was always going to be alone. You know, I was always going to be trapped as a consciousness in my own brain, and I'd never get to truly connect with another person. And it was so powerful to me.
How did that translate when you were done? Oop.
That's one of those lessons that I'm not sure how to integrate. And it's also a lot less significant when you're not under the influence of psilocybin. You know, when you're trapped in that thought pattern, that's what my whole universe was at that moment, you know. But then coming out of it, I can kind of recognize that as being like, oh, that's a mushroomy thought. You know, that's not, it kind of doesn't matter. And like for my purposes as a human being trying to get along in this world, that's not a helpful thought.
So you don't feel that way?
I mean, I feel that way to a certain extent, but what do I do with that? You know?
Do you ever feel like, well, I only say this because I've had experiences where people will share things about my life up to me, or generalizations about like, oh, you're just going through that feeling. And I always wonder, like, yeah, like, because you've been there, but obviously you haven't been there because you're not me.
Right.
But like, it's hard sometimes for me to put those two together, because in some scenarios, like my dad, for example, told me some really funny little thing when I was like kind of acting up when I was a teenager. And he was like, Beau, when you're 15, you're going to think you're really cool and you're really awesome and smart, but you're gonna be really dumb. And then when you're 17, you're going to be like, oh, when I was 15, I was so dumb, but now I'm really smart. And he goes, and you're going to be even dumber, and you're going to keep getting dumber, and you're going to be 22 and you're going to think, oh, now I got everything figured out, and you're going to be dumb as shit. And then like about 25, 26, you start coming around, and then you're still gonna be dumb, but you're gonna be, kind of getting a little bit smarter. Yeah. And, it wasn't true because I'm still dumb as fuck, but, but in those moments I was like, wow, he was like right on. Yeah. So that was a generalization, not like for me specifically, but I feel like there's times when that's right, when it's like, yeah, you don't know because you're not me. But then I also feel like, yeah, but you haven't experienced certain, let's say, Zed things that I have, and you're about to go through that. And so I know what you're feeling. It's hard because obviously I don't know.
Right. And we definitely, as humans, we experience the same states of consciousness. And it's not that I don't think people can understand what's going on in each other's lives, because people definitely have similar experiences. It's more of really, I was kind of tired of just listening to only myself in my head, and I would have loved it if somebody else could have been there with me.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about during that trip.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, mm-hmm. but I just felt lonely as a consciousness. Mm-hmm. I just felt like the human experience is kind of inherently lonely. Not that other human beings can't understand what you're going through or your states of mind in that moment, but just that, I guess that every man walks his journey alone. No matter what, you're always kind of going to be alone, Yeah. And that was just in that moment a really, really painful lesson for me. But
had you never thought about that before, and maybe that's why it was so painful?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the first time that I'd really considered how existentially alone I was, and I had people in my life that I could talk to and interact with. It's not like I was alone in my life. It was that I was alone in my head, and that was what was really disturbing in that moment. But that was really my only bad trip that I've ever had. And the way I solved that was like called my mom.
No, yeah?
Yeah.
On mushrooms?
Yeah.
Nice.
I remember I picked up the phone and I was like, hey mom, I just want to let you know I'm on mushrooms right now. I'm just having a really hard time. I just need someone to talk to. And she was really, really kind and loving, and she put me in a better state of mind. It was definitely a great phone call for sure. I'm glad that she didn't just disown me immediately.
Yeah. Is that something that she would do? Is she not open-minded in that way?
No, she's relatively open-minded. She just wants the best for me, and she's a pretty conservative lady, but she'd recognize that I was already in this state of mind, and I obviously wasn't thinking straight, and that's not the time to come at me saying, oh, I'm so disappointed in you, son. Look at what you've done. She just wanted me to feel better,
I'm not sure that my mom would have reacted the same way.
My mom is an angel.
That's great.
I love that lady.
That's fantastic.
I love you, Mom, if you're listening.
Shout out to Kellen's mom. But you said you had two experiences, or that was the only one that was really negative?
Well, that was the only experience I ever had that was really negative, and I don't think that it was wholly negative because I connected with my mom, which really felt great, and I had some interesting feelings of being. I felt this separation between my internal self and my body. I remember feeling really confused by my physical form and the whole physical space. I remember just having this feeling of being a being that is more than physical, which was kind of a beautiful experience while I was going through that. But that was really only my negative experience, and I don't think it was wholly negative. The other really powerful experience that I had indoors, I was just doing yoga. I remember I was doing yoga. I had my eyes closed this whole time, and it was the most powerful visuals that I've ever had any time that I've taken psychedelics. It was when I was just doing yoga and I was holding these poses for a really long time. Like I was probably in tree pose for like 25 to 30 minutes because I kind of just forgot what I was doing. I was so in it and in what was happening that it's not like when you're doing a normal like sun salutation or flow just to wake up in the morning where you're like, all right, I'm going to move through these asanas and just get through it. I was just really in that moment in the pose and I could settle deep into it and really like meditate in that position, which was really awesome. But I had really, really intense visuals during that. I just remember seeing and it's so stereotypical almost, but I remember seeing like Ganesh, the like Indian elephant
deity.
Goddess. Yeah. I remember just having such a vivid vision of Ganesh in my mind's eye.
These were closed eye visuals.
Yeah. With like triangular fractals coming out of like each hand. It was absolutely beautiful.
Which is quite ironic because isn't Ganesh the remover of obstacles?
I don't know. I don't know that much about Indian epistemology.
Well, we're gonna have Kelly on the podcast, and she's going to India and for a yogic retreat. So when she comes on, she can
illuminate this vision for me, perhaps.
Maybe she can like give you some insight, remove your obstacles. I think that's what it is. I have a little Ganesh statue in the bathroom, and it removes my obstacles quite well. Sorry to any Hindus out there. That was quite rude. But you know, I don't enjoy the closed eyes visuals as much, but I have very intense open eye visuals.
Really?
But I get too like dizzy and sick when I like close my eyes and say, I may see incredible things. I get that, but to be doing yoga while my eyes closed, even sober, is really intense, you know, like trying to just balance, you know?
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. And do you think that the breathing had anything to do with it?
Oh, I think so for sure. Well, that's just because breathing is the foundation of meditation, really. And because I was so focused on my rhythmic breathing, I was under the influence of psilocybin. I was in a pretty deep meditative state that if I was just walking in a park or just sitting watching a movie, I wouldn't have been in that same mental state. So I think that definitely the breathing had a lot to do with it for sure.
I think breathing also has so much to do with whether you have a good trip or a bad trip, because I see people like doing it, or I'm around them when they're doing it, or they tell me what they're doing when they had a bad trip. And it's usually because they're like hunched over watching something so intently. A old friend of mine told me that when he was younger, he was about 20 years older than me, he was down in a basement somewhere and he did some mushrooms, like handful of mushrooms, and he just watched a chair breathe for like 8 hours. But it was like this, he was too scared to get up and move, but he was, you know, like hunched over on the couch, just not breathing, and I'm trying to think if I've ever done yoga. I don't remember if I've ever done yoga, but I do conscious breathing where I'm not necessarily doing asana, but I guess yoga is also just breathing.
Yeah. That's the pranayama.
Is that what it is?
It's breath control.
Is that it goes yamas and then niyamas, and then those are the do's and don'ts. A lot of people think that yoga, and especially like I hear Joe talking about yoga, and it's like
he talks about Bikram's hot yoga, which is the most Western yoga you can do. Yeah.
I mean, I do see value in it for sure, but yoga is so much. It's the eightfold, not path. That's Buddhism, but there's like 8 concepts.
Yeah. And
asana is like number 4.
Right.
And that's the poses. And it's so Western for people to be like, I just did yoga. It's like, maybe.
Kind of.
Yeah, you stretched a little bit.
Yeah, know? That's one thing that I don't really, I mean, I definitely love going to my yoga classes, but it's more exercise than it is spiritual practice or meditation, you know? And I wish that there was more, I wish we had more of that, like true Indian spiritual yoga in America, because I think it's so powerful. I think you can have such powerful experiences, and it's so healing for your mind and body. And we just barely get a taste when you go to like a yoga class in the United States.
Well, I did my teacher training I did a 200-hour course at Core Power. Have you ever heard of Core Power?
No.
They're like a chain of yoga. It's like the Chipotle of yoga. You know, they started in Colorado and stuff, and they did like, it's like a power yoga. So it's vinyasa done to music in a hot room, you know, and they're a good company and they're really like respectful of the original traditions, but they understand that it's a business. Right. And so they need to cater towards the Western ideology as well. So we did learn about the yamas and niyamas and do all that kind of stuff and learn about different asana and the Sanskrit names as well. But overall, when I would go to their classes, which was like super fancy, you know, super expensive, but they had like full mirrored rooms, you know, really nice bathrooms and facilities and stuff like that. But you'd go through a 90-minute hot yoga class and they would be doing these really cool, you know, mandala style routines where you're kind of doing everything on one side and then you go do it on the opposite side, you know, but it was very physically intense. Then you lay in Shavasana, and depending on the teacher, it'd be like 40 seconds or like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But then after the 10-minute one, especially, and those were, I mean, there was an Indian guy who taught one, whatever. And after his class, he'd like sit up in the, what do you call it? Indian style sitting pose?
In lotus?
Lotus. But it wasn't full lotus. You know what I'm saying?
You're sitting crisscross applesauce?
Pretty much. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. And then I would think, now I'm ready for yoga. And then the lights would come on and they'd like kick you out, you know. But it was like, for me, it was like I'd have to get through that physical, really intense, trying to focus my mind. And now after that, then I was like, now I could meditate.
Yes.
Because my body's worn out and I've synced my mind with my body, and now my mind is worn out, so I can just kind of not zone, but focus into just the nothingness of meditation. And I know there's multiple different ways of meditation, but for me, that would have been a great thing. It's like after that 90-minute, now let's just sit for 30 minutes.
Right.
That would be yoga.
But you got to leave the class. Class is over. They're kicking you out.
Yeah. Next class is in 15 minutes. So we got to clean up in here. And I get it. You know, it's a business. I'm not at a ashram or in India and, you know, in like a proper thing, but
I totally feel you though. I feel like after I get done with yoga and like you said, you really tire yourself out, like that, you purge all of that energy that you have built up in your body and your mind, and you've emptied yourself of all of that, and now you can actually get deep into it. Like I think that like 2 to 3 hours is like the ideal amount of time to spend doing yoga, with the first hour being really intense and then settle into a more meditative practice. I think that that's really like the valuable yoga experiences that I've had, is when I really spend a lot of time doing it.
And when I was doing my teacher training course, I needed to do 50 classes or something like that, you know, 1 hour classes. I can't remember the amount, but me being the procrastinator that I am, I had to shove them all in at the end. And so I should have been doing like 3 times a week, but I ended up doing like 6 days a week yoga, and I felt so good. And I was tired and I was sore a lot, but I felt really, really, I'd bike home afterwards and I was just in this Zen state of just like, I don't care if I can't cross the street right now, or, you know, like, you know, when you're on a bike and momentum is everything, and when you got to stop at a stoplight and you're just like, ugh, you know, because you don't have to stop at a stoplight if there's no cars. Right. You know what I'm saying? But if you can't physically make that, you get really upset. But coming back from that yoga, I was just like, whatever, you know, it's not a big deal. Yeah. So, but I've never done mushrooms or acid or any psychedelic while doing yoga. I've done it while doing MDMA, and I wouldn't recommend that.
Why is it? Because you have so much extra energy. What?
Yeah. Have you done MDMA?
No, I still haven't done MDMA, right. And I don't know if that's something that I'm looking to do. It sounds more of like a fun experience than character building or deep experience.
I would say it's on the threshold of both. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, you're not doing meth to find yourself, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And I haven't consciously done meth, you know, so.
Have you unconsciously done meth?
Yeah, I've unconsciously done meth.
Like in a dream?
No. In physical world.
Nice.
Yeah. No, it was terrible. I didn't know it was meth. If I knew if it was meth, I wouldn't do it. You know what I'm saying?
I know a lot of people who have this exact same meth story where like, I accidentally did meth.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it if I wanted to.
Well, it wasn't like I was smoking it out of that little bulbous tube, that little glass thing, rotating it and whatever. I wasn't, I guess I am kind of shitting on people that do meth, but like, there's other things to do out there. People don't be doing meth, but I thinking it was MDMA or it was cut in the MDMA. Mm-hmm. So, cause it's just a white powder.
So you just took it orally?
Yeah, I just took it orally, and it gives you very similar, at the beginning, it was very similar to MDMA, but then you just get super angry and super aggressive by the come down. It was itchy. You couldn't sleep. I was very, very upset about it. And then we figured out that it wasn't MDMA. But MDMA is different because talking about like self-love or love for others, it can be, see, this is where it's like, if you're going to be a wook at some festival, it's probably going to be more lustful than to be emotionally like soul searching. But if you're doing it with like a good group of people, like I've done it with my best friend, Eric, countless times. And I just remember like this unbelievable amount of like brotherly love for him, where I was like, and you see through, everyone looks beautiful, not because they're like hot, but you see their character. And it's for me, it's been very transformative. It was I still enjoy doing that.
Even after the experience ends, do you feel like you get anything out of it? Or
some
when
people
it's
take
over?
too much and then they get a little grumpy afterwards, or they get pretty depressed. But if you really consciously, just like doing acid, like I'm not just gonna, oh, you got some? Let's just pop it in our mouths, not even thinking about what's going on today or tomorrow.
Right.
But tomorrow I'm gonna set myself up so tomorrow I don't have anything going on. I don't have to go to work. I can watch just cute, nostalgic movies, and I can smoke a little weed, just kind of keep your dopamine levels up. Eat really good things that make you feel good, and don't drink alcohol while you're doing MDMA. It's a lethal combination, because A, you can black out really easily doing that, but B, you're just putting yourself in that depressive state. When the MDMA wears off, you just drive yourself down in that depressive state, and it's very easy to do it because you also get really thirsty.
Right.
So you drink and you drink and you drink, and you don't feel the alcohol's negative components. You get that loose feeling, but you're not like, all of a sudden then you just black out. And I've had really negative experiences with that. However, I have done it while doing yoga, and the only reason I didn't like it was because you said I just had too much energy. It wasn't because I didn't, anything else. It was just like sitting in shavasana, I'm ready to be done.
Yes.
It's not conducive with yoga, but it is a really, in my experience, like I found a lot of self-love for myself, and I usually like write people really nice letters while I'm on it, and then I don't send them until I'm sober again. And I think, is this really what I want to, give out to the world? And then I do. And I mean, it came from my heart, it's not like, that's another thing, is that people think that like these drugs make you not what you are.
It just intensifies a certain aspect.
Yeah, for sure. And people are like, oh, I was so drunk last night. It wasn't me. I was like, yeah, it was you. It uplifted this really dark side of you, but it was you. Don't try to blame it on something else. That's some shitty, excuse. So I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you feel really lovey and you want to do stuff like that, don't send it while you're tripping,
right?
But send it the next day after you've read it, because there's a lot of, I think, repressed emotions that you don't want to share with people because you're worried about how they're going to feel if it's coming from a state of love. I think maybe this is more for men.
Mm-hmm. You're worried about it not being reciprocated.
Yeah, or they'd be like, you got all soft, or not reciprocative. And I think that when you do that and you just kind of send it, you're like, yeah, man, I do feel that in my heart, and I feel okay sending that out. So it's a cool thing. And again, I'd never pressure you or anybody to try that kind of stuff, but I would look at it as maybe not a party drug if you do it with the right intentions, Well,
one thing that's interesting, because I always say, oh, I don't want to do it. It sounds like a party drug. It sounds like there isn't any substance there. But MDMA is the farthest along in clinical trials right now to being used as a therapeutic substance. So for me to say that it's inherently a party drug and doesn't have any value is blatantly incorrect, because within the next 10 years, we're probably going to be seeing therapists using MDMA to treat PTSD.
Yeah, and I'd like
beautiful.
to see that, and that's in a clinical therapeutic style. That's not going to a,
not going to a festival and telling a million people you love them.
Yeah, exactly. And dressing up with barely anything on, and what are those little fire globes that you throw around your head? I'm just trying to think of the Wookiee stuff that they do,
All you've got is the finger
the little
gloves
finger,
with the light up
gloves.
fingers.
You watch the people chewing their lips off. Mm-hmm.
All you're wearing is those gloves and an Indian headdress, nothing else.
Yes. And I can't like clinically dose you, but like 0.1.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a much lower dose than what people are taking recreationally.
0.01. See, I shouldn't be recommending anything. But 0.1 is probably quite a bit. You know, like it's a very, very small amount will make you feel pretty good. And again, that would be a great thing to kind of microdose with because you just kind of get yourself in a nice state. However, the calm down, if you do too much, is pretty wretched. So be careful.
I've heard it referred to as like Suicide Tuesdays.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the other big things
Who's doing it on a Monday? Good God. People, you got it all wrong. It's a Friday night drug for sure.
Suicide Sunday doesn't sound much better though.
No, it doesn't. It sounds sacrilegious too.
It's true. One of the other big things that I've heard about MDMA is that's kind of kept me away from it is I've heard of people having Molly girlfriends where they'll wake up after a MDMA experience and they've got a new girlfriend that they didn't know anything about, where they just broke down and shared their whole life with this person that they met on MDMA, and they decided, oh, our spirits are meant for each other. We're it, you know? And they wake up and who the fuck is this person?
Oh my God. It gives you the devil's tongue. That's for sure. That's one thing about it that you got to be really conscious about is like, for some reason, the ugliest dude could just slay everyone because he's just got silver coming out of his mouth. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Or maybe you're just so persistent. It's just you exude confidence. You have no fear of rejection. There's just no fear of rejection. So when you come up to a girl or something like that and you're talking to her, even if she's like, no, get the fuck away from me, you're like, all right. Move on to the next one. Which is kind of, I mean, again, that's in a party sense, you know, the Molly girlfriend, that's a part, you know, if you're in your room or hanging out with some good friends, you're not going to wake up with somebody you don't know. That's the same for alcohol, you know, it's the same thing. But you know, it's just everything to be done in moderation, but
amen to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially like what you were saying about how when you took mushrooms and you went back in the next day and tried to take it again and didn't get it. That's something I think a lot of people don't understand. Like I know when I was in Tahoe this summer, I had a buddy who near the end of the summer was getting a lot of mushrooms, and he didn't know a lot about psychs. He didn't really know all that much about mushrooms. I think he'd maybe tripped like once or twice before. But he'd take a bunch one day, and then the next he's like, I want to trip again. It's my day off. And then he'd take another handful, and I would tell him before, like, don't do it again. You're not going to get any effect. He's like, nah, man. Like, it's definitely going to work out. I'll just take more. And then like an hour and a half later, he'd be like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. I'm gonna take more. No. I'm like, this isn't the way that it works. Mm-hmm. And thank God it doesn't work that way. I think that the fact that we build up an immediate tolerance to psilocybin is definitely a gift from the plant. It's what allows it, I think, to have so much spiritual power, because it encourages you to treat it as something that's special, and you can't go back to it every day. It's not going to become your life, and it keeps it inherently as an important experience, you know?
Going back to your little ritualistic thing, I mean, that's kind of the same concept, is you have to have self-discipline before you can enter the kingdom, you know? It's like, you know what I'm saying? And I totally went against that, even though I knew, you know what I'm saying? I was like, well, you gave me a lot. And I was like, well, I only took like 4 stems and a couple caps. So I was like, there's so much more. I'm just going to take all of it. And it didn't. It had no, I mean, it did slight, just a little hump of an effect. But had I taken just that same amount on nothing before, I would have been on the floor. Yeah. I would have been through the roof, you know?
I also, I think that also it's important. I mean, it's good that you build up that immediate tolerance, because I think that it wouldn't be healthy for you if you could go into that space day after day after day. I think that I think it definitely would lead you into psychosis or not being connected to consensus reality.
Yeah, because it just breaks apart the fabric of reality. So you're just,
And I feel like it's a space that can be really useful to access, but not a good place to live. Definitely not.
Well, whenever I've had a really intense trip, like the time I did the test and the math test, I wasn't tripping hard. It was just like little, like, ooh, this is not normal kind of stuff. But I've tripped way harder than that. And any time that I trip super, super hard, and the next morning I'm like, okay, it's good to take a couple months off now.
Yeah.
I'm never like, let's just dive into that again. They call it a trip for a reason. You feel like you've been there and back.
Yeah.
You know, like I certainly feel, I also feel like it's like in these weird seasonal, do you ever feel like seasonal when you're doing it? I know it's super general, but when I take shrooms or any psychedelics, I feel like it has this like ebb and flow of tripping really, really hard. And then all of a sudden you're like, am I still tripping again? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still tripping again. But then when I come up the next time, it's kind of like I'm in a new era or a new realm. And then I go down and I come back up and then I'm kind of in another, no?
Are you talking about over the span of one trip?
Over the span of one trip. I
definitely 100% feel that. I feel like it definitely comes in waves. And I don't know if that's because you become somewhat accustomed or used to what your experience is after you come up the first time. You're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Then you get used to being at that level, and then it gets a little bit weirder, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Where am I? Who am I? And then you get used to being there, and that pattern sort of continues until the come down, and then there's some little trailing points where you come up again. But I definitely feel you. I definitely think it comes in waves.
Or you feel like super nostalgic about something, and then 30 minutes later you're just giggly for no reason, and that nostalgic feeling doesn't have any value anymore.
I think that's also because it makes you so suggestive to whatever stimuli are coming in. So in one moment you're reacting to the way that the wind feels on your face and the way the trees are moving, and that makes you feel a certain way. And then you see like a car drive by and you're caught in the absolute absurdity of what a car is, you know, and you're just stuck giggling on the floor about the idea of this thing with four wheels, this giant metal like hippopotamus barreling down the road, you know, and it makes no sense to you.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that wave feeling is just a function of how suggestive or how easily suggestible you are. But I definitely feel that it comes in waves like that for sure. When you were saying, do you feel seasonal? I was thinking more like, do you feel certain times in the year where you feel more of a pull to do it? Or because I definitely feel that. Definitely when things start getting a little bit cooler and the leaves start falling.
Right about now.
Yeah, right about
October.
I start to really get the pull to start experimenting with psychedelics again. Because during the summer I don't feel drawn to it. I don't feel like I need that experience. But when the seasons start to change, I kind of get a little bit depressed a little bit. I get a little bit of seasonal depression, and I start to disconnect from who I am. Like when the shoulder season comes around and I can't do the things that I find like pleasing anymore, and I need to get into a more like intellectual space rather than a physical space, I start to feel this pull to do them. I don't know. And I think that's really interesting, because I think that a lot of the ancient uses that we know of psychedelics were always connected to like agricultural rituals and things like that, or like the solstices, you know. And so I think it's interesting that I always get this feeling around harvest season, you know.
For sure.
But I don't know.
I also feel the same way, and fall is my favorite time of year.
Really?
Absolutely. And I was born in the spring, so I think there's something about the opposite time of year that to me that's really exciting. I don't know why. I don't really like spring. There's so many bugs are out, and like, you know what I'm saying? The grass is super tall and the ticks are out, and it's like I don't like hiking in the spring at all. I hate it. And even though like the wildflowers and all that stuff looks pretty, I just skip it and go to summer. And then I hike in fall as well, and I even hike in winter. That's just like obviously one of my hobbies is to hike.
Right. I like the spring because I feel like the spring, it's got its own beauty in that, especially here in Montana, when you get up into the mountains, there's still a lot of snow around, and it retains a lot of that harshness of winter. But then you can start to see the plants peeking out in the places where the snow is melt, and it's harsh, but it holds the promise of spring or of summer. And I feel like there's something beautiful just about that like transitional period. Like I think spring is a really, really beautiful time.
Yeah, that's the exact reason I hate it, because everything's muddy and I don't know, like everything's wet. I sound like a little prince or something that doesn't want to go outside, but seriously, I just feel like I'm not a big, I don't know, maybe spring in Tahoe is a little different, or maybe spring here, I guess, is a little bit different. But back in Minnesota, it's like you get these really nice, like 60-degree days, or even 40-degree days are like people come out in shorts and flip-flops on 40-degree days.
Yeah.
But there's still that like hard, icy, gray snow like lumped up on the curb, and
it's the snow that's just covered in road
salt
junk.
And just yuck. It's just so gross. And I don't know. And then obviously then also you go outside and it's 60 degrees and you're like super excited that now winter's finally over, but then a cloud comes over and it's 30 degrees again. You're like, ugh, get back inside and like huddle back in there.
Get
again,
my cocoa.
That might be a Minnesota thing. I don't know. We have this amnesia in Minnesota because we have 6 months of winter, but then all of a sudden May and June come by and we're like, God, who wouldn't want to live here? Come October 31st, there's like 4 feet of snow and it's 2 below,
You're like, oh God, what have we done to ourselves?
I know, it's the amnesia. So maybe I just have that about it. But autumn to me is so beautiful because of the colors, and because there's something so beautiful about the death. Because nothing is great when you have it every day. Nothing is great, and I think a lot of people don't recognize that until fall comes around. You really appreciate the summer days, in that like last summer day, that really, really nice day, and you feel that wind coming. You know what I'm talking about? And it happens in like August. It's not fall yet, but you're like, oh yeah, it's coming. That the big freeze is almost here, and so
it definitely makes you more, it makes you recognize how beautiful the summer is, for sure. I definitely get that feeling when you get that breeze and it comes in and you're like, I need to really recognize how amazing this is while I've got it, because it's not gonna last.
And the difference between the spring and the autumn here is that there's still snow in the mountains, and especially in the peaks in both of those seasons, but you get the colors in this season.
Yeah.
And you get that bright green, which is like, it's okay, it's nice, and some of the leaves are not developed yet, but either all the leaves are like off or some of them are still falling. And I love I don't know, there's something just magical about it's come to an end, and there's like a lot of gratitude that comes when it comes to an end. And it's sad. It's really sad. I'm like, summer's done, but now we get to like look forward to doing it all over again. It's a beautiful rebirth thing. So going back to the mushrooms, I feel that like a constant like rebirth, death, rebirth, death. And in that trip that seems to last forever, there's this kind of like acceptance of both. So you kind of get to the point like, even though this is done, it's okay, it'll happen again, and even when the trip is finally over, you're like, all right, that was, I'm sad that it's done. I'm sad I'm not feeling that euphoria and that trip anymore, but at the same time, I'm also happy that I get to like experience away from that for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that one of the big like motifs of psychedelic experience is that death and rebirth motif, for sure. A lot of people, especially like when you go through an ego death experience, you might as well be dying. It's like it's in the name, ego death. You definitely have that death and then being reborn experience. And so I think that when you see nature kind of closing down for the winter, I think it kind of sets the stage for that sort of experience. I definitely understand why this might sort of be the time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I don't love about autumn is like death. There's definitely that beauty to death and giving it all back to the earth and seeing the cycle repeat. But I don't like the promise of death, and the promise of the cold winter, whereas spring, it holds the promise of rebirth, which is the exciting moment. The death isn't the exciting moment,
right?
Yeah. But I definitely do appreciate fall because we get things like pumpkins and big harvests.
I got 3 big pumpkins this year.
Yeah,
I'm
have
very
you
excited
carved them
about
up yet?
Not yet. No. So I was lucky enough to use a friend of mine's garden, and it was like a 4 foot by 30 foot. It's a big garden, and I planted a whole bunch of different things. But the pumpkins, man, you got to plant those in a quarantine zone because they will take over. They are like invasive. They come with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And they start really cute. You're like, look at these little pumpkins. They're so tiny. And then the next day you come out, they've already strangled up the spinach and they're headed for the tomatoes. You know, they're vicious. So I had never grown them before, but I cut like 30 little tiny ones. I saw them start balling up, and I just cut them right off the vine because I wanted to.
Because you wanted to focus on the couple.
For sure. So I only ended up with 3, but I mean they're like big. I mean that's like that big, maybe a little bit smaller, and then I got one white one.
For those of you listening, he was.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He was making a space with his hands, maybe 18 inches.
Yeah, let's say like a little bit bigger than a basketball. Let's say like. Take a basketball and then I take half of the basketball and put it on the outside. That's even harder that's terrible. Sorry. And one's like the size of a basketball. That's a good analogy. And one's like the size of a volleyball.
Are basketballs and volleyballs different sizes?
Yeah. Basketball's big. Basketball's way bigger than a volleyball.
I'm not inclined.
The
to
white
ball
one
sports.
is like a volleyball because it's white and it's a little bit smaller. Okay. It's like a handball. Okay. You never seen a handball either. All right. Whatever. I got a big pumpkin, a medium pumpkin, and then a smallish medium pumpkin.
Okay.
Out of it. But I was really excited because at first the frost was coming. So I was like, I got to get these off, but they were still green. And the other one was,
pumpkins are hardy. Pumpkins can handle a little bit of frost. Yeah. I mean, they're a fall. They're like a winter squash.
Yeah, but also all of the leaves that had these big, huge umbrella leaves, they all died. And I was like, okay, so it's probably not picking up any more energy.
It doesn't have any more photosynthetic
There's
potential.
no more. But you're right. It did last through all the little pre-frosts. But as soon as it like snowed once, it was like, they're like, we're done.
Yeah.
So I cut them off, but they were still green. And it took like a month, but they finally turned orange. I'm just so excited to get them and save the seeds. Well, I'm going to eat some, but save some of those seeds and plant them next year. Because they're really fun to grow. They're really, really fun. But they're prickly like a motherfucker. So you try to handle those, you handle with those gloves.
Yeah,
they bite you.
Yeah, when I was working at the farm, I always hated having to go and harvest the squash because the squash are all grown at the bottom of the plant, and you got to reach through this just mass, and they'll grow like 15 different big leaf stalks, and each one of these stalks is just. It looks like it's like a wood file, you know. You reach in to go grab this one squash, and you come out, and it looks like you just got attacked by like a bobcat. Like, not worth it.
Yeah.
But then you eat that squash, and
it's so good. Buttered squash, and that's another reason I love this time of year. The fruit that grows this time of year, is it a fruit? It's a vegetable, no?
What, squash?
Yeah, it's a fruit.
Squash are definitely a fruit.
Yeah, fruit. And pumpkin's a fruit.
Seeds.
The fruit that you get out of there at this time of year.
You want to know a quick secret to identifying a fruit versus vegetable?
I would love to know, actually.
A fruit is the sexual organ of the plant.
Okay.
So like the ovary and the seed is the fruit. And then a vegetable isn't even a real thing, like botanically or horticulturally. It's just any piece of like plant vegetation that we would eat.
Okay, so you're saying it's not a real thing, like it's not biologically sexual.
Right. But like a vegetable can be anything that's not the fruit, you know, like you're eating the stalk of a plant,
like
and it's
an
a
oak
vegetable.
tree without the oak nuts or the acorns is a vegetable.
If you're gonna eat the leaves or something, then that would be a vegetable.
Interesting. Okay, so tomatoes are fruits.
Yeah, avocados.
Bananas are fruits.
Bananas are fruit.
That's obvious, right?
Yeah,
because it's a seed. That was an obvious one. Everybody knows bananas.
Yeah, people get confused about like avocados and tomatoes. I've never heard anyone be like,
banana. Are Fruit Loops fruits? Okay, avocado's a fruit.
Yeah.
Walnuts?
They're a nut.
Okay, that's in the name.
Yeah.
Again, I could have figured that one out.
And
Sorry,
I forget what the actual classification is that makes it a nut. It's that the nuts are the seeds, but there's something specifically.
But there's no fleshy part, right?
Yeah, it's something specifically about the seed coat that makes it a nut. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So almonds are fruits.
Almonds are a nut.
But don't they have a fleshy outside and the almond is on the inside? No. Is that not how they grow? I don't know.
But you're not eating that like fleshy part. You're only eating the almond nut.
Okay. So, okay. Fair enough. Do you like pumpkin seeds?
I love pumpkin seeds.
I love those. My mom makes a good recipe with those. I think with like brown sugar or something. It's so good.
I don't love a sweet pumpkin seed, but I definitely love a
salty,
savory or like a little bit of spice on my pumpkin seeds, a little bit of like cayenne, a little bit of like paprika.
Sounds good.
Like, yeah.
That's one of my favorite things. We're having a Day of the Dead party. You're coming.
Yeah.
It's the weekend after Halloween. And we're going to do face painting here, but we'll be eating some of the pumpkin seeds.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you want to bring any, you can, but you can eat mine.
Bring any pumpkin seeds. I don't have access to pumpkins right now.
You can buy some from a store. You cheap ass.
It depends. Are your pumpkins organic? Because I know the ones at Walmart aren't.
I don't know if my pumpkins are organic, but I got them from a real cute little mom and pop seed shop, and they didn't even have a little label on the thing.
Oh,
you know
cool.
what I'm saying? It was just a white package, with pumpkin seeds, and it said pumpkins on them.
Nice.
So I'm guessing that they're heirloom.
And you didn't put anything on them,
no,
right?
No. I didn't even put organic fertilizer on them. I guess the only thing I did put was my grass clippings over it to keep the stalks hydrated.
Did you put anything on your grass? Do you guys use
No, I took care of the lawn this year. No, water. That's all I put on the grass.
Oh, nice. So they probably are organic.
Yeah, no, I did nothing. I never mess with chemicals. Even to take weeds out, I left a lot of the weeds in there, and I just kept cutting them at the fleshy part. That didn't.
You wouldn't even
sense.
pull it out?
No. Mm-mm.
Wow.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes that something with the ecology would keep some bugs away or something like that. I don't know. I just, it wants to grow there and it's kind of working in the system. I'd pull some that were taking over sunlight, but the little ones down there, I just let that grow. And then they die off quick because they have such shallow roots.
Right.
And
they just burn up.
Yeah. And especially we got there was a time I was in Oregon for like a week, and I was gone for quite a while, and it got really, really hot. And those, I think there was a lot of moisture in those weeds, and it kept the soil very moist because I kept all the fleshy stuff, so it would kind of shade the soil.
Yeah. So you'd cut it and just leave the dead.
Yes, I would basically compost right in where I was doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because then also the nutrients, I would figure that the good plants would eat them.
Yeah, anything that weed stole from the other plants next to it, just going right back in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about it.
And that's kind of how I feel about the weeds too, is that if a weed is growing there, it means that you've left an ecological niche open. Like there's a space for that weed to be growing, and it's obviously not stealing the role of whatever you were intending to grow completely. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to grow there, Yeah. Unless it is inherently just noxious and more competitive, which is true in some cases.
I'm sure that is, but in no case did the weeds ever really overtake any of the plants that I wanted. I'll tell you, kale and broccoli will grow in hell. Like they here, at least in Montana, with good soil, I never had to weed anything around there. No weeds grew anywhere near that stuff. So
I think that might be a little bit of beginner's luck, because broccoli is definitely a pretty hard crop to grow. Speaking from experience at the farm, we generally don't have very good luck with broccoli. Broccoli really wants like a warm soil, but then a little bit cooler air. So you just kind of have to get lucky. You got to find the right place for it. One way I've seen people grow broccoli, which I think is really interesting, is they'd put big urns of like big clay urns under the soil. They'd bury them next to wherever they're gonna be planting their broccoli, and they'd fill it with water and put like a black bucket over the top of it, so that black bucket would attract all the like sun's energy and heat up that water. And so
yeah, but what's going on underneath with like a terracotta pot?
Yeah, so the water inside that pot heats up from the sun's energy, and then it stays warm because water has a really low specific heat, meaning that it doesn't want to give off its heat energy, or it holds onto that heat energy. It doesn't just give it up really quick like a metal does,
Yeah.
So it keeps that soil area around it warmer during the nighttime, and so you've got a warmer soil environment.
I'm still trying to visualize why the terracotta pots are under the ground.
because they're warming the soil. It's like a way of holding
So where's the broccoli growing?
around the pot.
Around the pot.
Yeah, so in your
Okay.
soil bed, you bury
You just have
these
a black
urns.
jug of water like in the middle.
Yeah,
And then all the broccoli's growing around that black jug?
yeah.
Okay, interesting. I guess I did have beginner's luck, but Kelly, the woman that we're going to have on here, she gave me this broccoli and I transplanted it like a dumbass. I like cut the tap root. It was wilty when I put it in. I laid it in the grave basically as I replanted it. After like an hour of it sitting in my hot car, I like hosed it down with, you know, when the hose sits out and it's just got all that hot, bubbly, yucky water. And I just sprayed it with that, like ripped some leaves as I did. And I came back like a week later and it was the strongest plant growing in the whole garden. So I must have had beginner's luck, but that stuff was amazing for me.
Or you just had good soil.
That also is probably the case. I think I had really good soil in that garden. You know,
Where about in the valley is it?
in the valley.
Yeah, in the Gallatin Valley.
What are you talking about?
This little patch of beautiful soil that you have.
Oh no, it's a couple blocks away from here. It's not in the Gallatin Valley.
This is the Gallatin Valley.
Oh, it is? I didn't know that. I was thinking somewhere in the mountains. I thought you jumped completely. I had no idea what you're talking about.
But is it like closer to the mountains, like that way?
No, it's north down West Yellowstone,
Oh,
like 5 blocks.
Because the closer you get to the mountains, generally the better the soil gets.
But here's the thing: it was a raised bed, so somebody put soil in there.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was
interesting.
placed in there. It wasn't like a proper farm garden, but it had about 3 feet of soil. So it had a considerable amount of soil. And it looked like it had been grown in before, but it still looked pretty black, you know?
Lots of nice humus in there.
Yeah, definitely. But only grass really seemed to pop up at first. So, you know, those starter weeds, you know, that usually establish themselves. There wasn't really any of that. There was iceberg lettuce and dill that was in there that had
It came back up.
came up on its own.
That's cool. I always love seeing that.
I
seeing
love
the
that.
stuff from last year that dropped its seed and still surviving. I think that's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
So I let
for
it go
sure.
to seed. I didn't even really harvest any of it because I wasn't around enough to get the iceberg lettuce. I had a little bit, and I don't really love dill unless I'm using it as like a spice. So I like it dried and ground. But
I really like growing dill because I think that one of the best and most important things you can do if you're seriously farming and you need to store vegetables over the winter is pickling. And dill is just an awesome pickling spice. And I think if you can grow your own pickling spices and you can have a pickled product where everything came from the same plot of land, I just think there's something beautiful about that, you know, completely controlling your end product with zero external inputs is just awesome. So I think dill is always something that I'll grow, but just because I love that whole farm.
I
approach
love
to
that too.
pickling.
I don't know how to jar anything, but I think that's a great thing. Like if you could jar like peaches, you know, or I just
Well,
think
canning,
sorry.
canning's a different thing from pickling. Pickling is really, really easy.
You just fill it with water and
You fill it with like a vinegar.
cucumbers and vinegar
Yeah.
and dill. That's how you make dill pickles.
Yeah.
I hate pickles.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan
That's
of
the one.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of pickles you get from the store. I really don't love the way they like turn such a sickly green color. Because when you actually pickle something yourself, they don't do that.
Really?
Yeah,
They stay that dark cucumber green.
The outside rind does, but then the fruit part of it stays really light. Like, you know, when you look at an actual pickle, it's got that like snot green color to it, that like yellowy green color that the actual like fruit gets.
Yeah.
You don't see that when you're actually pickling yourself. So I'm just inherently a little bit suspicious of like a Vlasic pickle. I'm sure they've got that snap to them, but it's not right. The pickle looks sick.
Okay. Like it was happy to come out of that jar.
Yeah. It's happy that you're putting it out of its misery.
Yeah. Just eat it quick.
Yeah.
I don't like pickles. I'm not a fan. I don't like cucumbers really either. So
You don't like cucumbers? Cucumbers are so mild. Saying you don't like cucumbers is like saying you don't like the wind, like a mild breeze. Like, you know, I just really hate when it's like, like 70 degrees outside. Just can't stand when
Yeah,
things
it's
are
too
just
mild.
fine.
Yeah, I want it to be really frigid or just blazing hot. No, I don't know. I just don't. It's just like empty calories. I just don't like. I'll eat it if it's in a salad. I won't ever throw it away if it's on the plate, but I really don't prefer them.
So when you're at the salad bar, you don't reach for the cucumber slices?
Hell no, I never put cucumbers on anything. I've put them on my eyes once when I was doing a spa thing.
Never again.
Never again. It made my eyes feel so mild. You know, it wasn't a great experience. But no, I don't like those. But that's pretty much all I don't like. I'll eat pretty much everything else. I'll try it at least. I don't really have any things that I just hate. You hate any foods?
Like I don't like pickles really. I mean, I like. I'm not a huge radish guy, honestly. But I'll
like radishes.
eat them. You know, I don't really like. And I don't like mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is
Really?
one thing I don't really like. But other than that, I pretty much eat, I don't like hot dogs. I won't eat hot dogs.
Okay, but hot dogs from the little 8-pack or hot dogs like a proper made hot dog?
like generally, I'm not just a hot dog guy.
Do you not like pork?
I'm fine
Do
with
you eat
pork.
beef dogs? Like a brat? That's pork.
I just kind of stay
you like
away from
bratwurst?
the hot dog like form factor, just
Okay.
in general.
Is it the casing?
I think it's the phallic appearance of it.
Really?
Maybe
Yeah.
gets me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really the reason.
Yeah,
But
you know.
I don't know, something about hot dogs. Like I just don't eat them. Like if I'm at a barbecue, I'm always going for the burger. I'm never going for the brat for sure.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I'll do a hot dog over a brat, but I really like beef dogs. Like beef feels better in my mouth than pork does. But I like the hamburgers. I go for hamburgers first.
Yeah.
I'm a blue cheese kind of guy on hamburgers.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying?
artisanal.
You know what I'm saying? I like that kind of stuff. So circling kind of a little bit further back to your seasonal usage, do you have any plan on doing any mushrooms this fall in this end of year feel? Or do you not want to talk about that on
I'd
the
like
podcast?
to. Hypothetically,
Yeah, we're not saying anything for sure here.
yeah. Hypothetically, I might. But right now, I don't really have.
I wasn't asking if you have any on you right now.
Yeah,
That's a different question.
Right now, I don't have access
Yeah.
to them.
Okay.
I don't really have any plans on the horizon. I've been kind of thinking about it, trying to think of when the next like big solar event is, because I definitely want to make sure I'm doing it just like not on like a Saturday. I want to, even if it's just for myself, I want to make sure that I'm doing it on a day that is somewhat special, so I can. I just like the ritualisticness of it. I like it. It makes it feel more important. It feels like there's some cosmic significance or a reason why I'm doing it. So
Having that said, do you feel like sometimes humans can give significance to something and then it actually has significance? Like it actually almost like alchemically change whatever it is because of the significance? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of don't take it so seriously. You know, I like to do it on these specific kinds of days, but I don't have any justification for it, or I have made it special to myself, and I'm like priming my brain to believe it's special because I've assigned significance to this date, you know, because I could incidentally just do it on a day that happens to be like the equinox and not know any different. And I may not have that same sort of experience. Whereas when I've set myself in the mindset of wanting to align myself spiritually with the cosmos or whatever, like I've set that intention, you know, I've created that connection. And I think, especially when you're under the influence of psychedelics, those sort of connections become so much more powerful and significant to you. So I totally recognize that I think I'm mostly creating this for myself, but I think it's important to have rituals tied.
That's actually not what I was asking.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you feel that you are giving it significance, but then in turn it becomes significant. Like that you are giving the cosmos this significant, you know what I'm saying? Like it's hard for me to formulate an example, but where it's like, let's say everyone on Earth did mushrooms on the summer solstice.
Yeah.
Is there something there? Like, did something happen? Or is it still just all in our heads? Like, can we create, would like the universe in some way responds almost like a reaction to us giving it the significance? Or no? So like this would even go back to like the only examples that I can think of, because I can't give anything, is like a religious experience where a bunch of people see something, attribute it to some deity, and then it was almost like you talk to these people and they're like, it's so beyond them. They feel like it was actually something else, you know. It's maybe hard for what I'm trying to say here, but
well, there would have to be something else to respond to you, you know? And I'm not 100% sure that the universe has the ability to respond to us. I really do think that a lot of the meaning we create for ourselves or trick ourselves into having meaning.
Okay, let's say everyone believed in the same God. And every single person that was alive believed in that. Did we just create a God? You know what I'm saying?
For all functional purposes, we've created an experience of God, but whether or not we've actually brought it into existence,
right? But it's kind
doubtful.
of like dancing on the line of what truth really is.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Like in your mind, when you're doing the shrooms and you're having intense visuals, you're like, everything is going crazy right now. And everyone else in the room is like, no, it's not. But it's true for you.
Yeah.
But it's also true for them that it's not. And obviously that's there's the caveat that you've done something else to alter your state of consciousness. But at the same moment, there's something true for you that's not true for every single other person in that room.
Right.
So like,
and it is still true. It is still a real experience that is
it's
undeniable.
an actual thing. Right. So I'm just saying, like, bringing that to the solstice, or like harvesting on the full moon or planting on the full moon, that kind of stuff. Like if everyone starts giving it significance, does it not become significant? Like, does it not in its own, not just for our functional idea of it, but like in reality? Because
consensus reality, because everybody's going to agree with you and back up your experience, but does it become, I mean, this becomes, it's just the challenge of describing what reality actually is.
I understand, but haven't you ever heard of these studies where like you play classical music for plants and they grow in a more productive and positive way, and then you like scream at plants and you say all these negative things, and
you play metal for them?
Yeah, and they like barely grow, and they're very, you know, so like
I think plants can hear.
So that's what I'm saying, is if we all decide to start doing something for something else, we like give it that significance, it responds with a specific positive response. Like, you know, I know I'm jumping all over to try to make the same point, but it's like if we wanted to, let's say, like heal the world, we would be doing what we could to heal the world, but in response, the world would start healing because we've given it that significance. I guess I think I've even exhausted my own mental capacity on this, but I don't know. It's just an interesting thought I kind of had as you were saying that, talking about the solstices and the kind of biodynamic kind of feeling about stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, if you think about like an organic, happy farm kind of thing, you know, everything seems to just have that energy about it. When the people that are cultivating it put that energy into it.
I think that there is a feeling of being actually connected to an organic process that I think that when you're working with plants, I think you kind of get on their same wavelength. And I think that's a real thing, more than us putting this energy into the plants. I think we more become tuned into the actual energy of the natural process, and we've become part of that like community and that experience of being a steward or being a creature on the land. Mm-hmm. I don't think that we necessarily are creating that. I'm kind of also confused as to how you think that playing like classical music for plants kind of fits into this whole idea. I didn't really understand that.
Yeah, I guess I was jumping, but what I was saying is, I guess more that it's not just humans that have this conscious, it's beyond just a thought. It's like a feeling, it's an energy, it's a vibration that you're giving out. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about solstices, it is like the seasons, like literally it is the change of seasons for us.
Yeah.
So there's like some significance to that. Animals change colors,
right,
based on the solstices and the equinoxes and stuff like that. Equini? I don't know that one. Or solstice. I think you said that before. But like literally solstice. Okay, solstices, equines.
I don't know, man.
But like animals in the Arctic will shed or grow a different color fur based on the seasons.
Yeah.
So that's beyond anything that we're giving significance to. That's significant in its own right. I guess I'm trying to circle back to, I think you're skeptical of something that might actually be real. Whereas the solstice does have some significance. And when there's a partial eclipse and you don't really notice it because you're not in the eye of what's that called? The horizon or something, where you see the full eclipse.
Right. The event horizon. Is that
yeah. That's what I'm looking for. In two different scenarios, actually in multiple scenarios, but two that I can remember, I knew there was a solstice, and I went and looked at the sun at the time that it said it was, but it was only partial for where I was standing. And so I didn't really notice anything. It didn't get darker. It was just the same. And people on the street, they had no idea. They had no significance. But then the people that are standing in the shadow of the moon, they're freaking out.
Yeah.
And it's actually significant for them in that time. It's like the same thing as they're tripping on mushrooms, but you're not. So
right.
You're just, but there's like I don't know, you're tapping into the energy, just like the way the plants, I all I'm trying to say is I think there's more significance to what you are giving it, even though it sounds to me like part of you feels like there should be.
Well, one thing that I think is important to remember is that we're humans, we're animals, and we have evolved in response to our environment and the patterns of our environment, such as like the day-night cycles. Like that's something that's very easy to measure, like the circadian rhythms and patterns that we have based on the passage of the days. And I think that, like you said, there are processes that animals undertake at certain times of the year, and we're sensitive to these changes in like the photo periods of the days, whether we're not conscious. Like we don't say like, oh, today there was 10 hours and 37 minutes of light,
Yeah.
But I think that there's some subconscious animal part of our brain that is definitely aware of these sorts of things and starts to create changes in our bodies. And there are definitely measurable chemical changes that in the human body that accompany the change in seasons, especially in places like Bozeman or like Idaho or Oregon, where when winter starts to come in, you really start to get a lot less sunlight and you start like getting less vitamin D. Your body isn't producing as much vitamin D. And that's just one example of a measurable chemical change that accompanies the change in seasons, And so I think that definitely as animals, we are on some level tuned on to these like celestial and like solar processes. I think 100% that is true. We're tapped into this same solar energy that the plants are connecting to, that the animals are connecting to. We're all responding to these forces, or like the pull of the moon. These are like measurable forces and changes that occur at certain times of the year. So I definitely think that on some level there is something significant, and there are changes that happens on like solstices and equinoxes. They are definite symbols of a change in time, not just consciously, but physically we're going to respond to that change. Our body's going to start prepping for the winter, you know, or starting to get ready for summer. There's definitely some part of our like lizard brain that responds to that. I 100% feel that way. And so that's why I started to think of like the solstice as being a significant time, is because I just wanted to be in reverence to my position as an animal and my dependence on these cycles, these natural cycles that I'm just beholden to. I have no control over, you know? I think that's definitely real, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I think I'm a little bit more willing or open to those ideas to my detriment oftentimes when they kind of even go against scientific explanation, because I just want them to be real.
Right.
You know, but there's something magical about, for me, making eye contact with a wild animal. In that moment, we're both conscious of each other.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really cool, you know, or any animal really, because, and I guess with humans that's the same, but it's more common with humans, and it's more, you know, it's the likelihood of that happening is way, way higher. So it's almost like when the sun is doing this amazing thing on this, with this rock, you know, floating around it, and then you're acknowledging it too. It's almost like you're staring it in the eyes and you're both conscious of each other, which is maybe insignificant, but it's also significant. It's, you know, for me, it's kind of like, maybe it's only a drop of water in an ocean, but I just still feel, I think there are so many of these cosmic things that are going on. Like if you think about like meteor showers, and you're seeing them and they may never come again. You just saw something that's so rare and so unique and so special, you know, and you're conscious of it, and it could have gone over your head without you knowing. Yeah,
you just got to witness the end of that meteor's 1,000,000-mile journey.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. You were there for it.
Yeah. It's like I don't know, it's just a spiritual thing. It goes beyond, who cares, the scientific explanation. It's kind of like a beautiful soul warming thing, you know. For me it is. I don't know. So I'm all about that stuff. And even in the old company, when I was talking to you last time about rare earth, rare essence, we celebrated those days. You know, it was you know, menial. We didn't really do much, but it was kind of like we're all conscious of it,
and you acknowledged it.
We were all acknowledging of it. And I think we just kind of created mini holidays out of it, and it was just like a special conscious thing that we did. I don't know, it's just kind of cool. Were you around when 11/11 was a big deal?
Was I around? Like, was I alive?
Not really alive, yeah, but were you conscious of it? Or is that still a thing? Do people still do that? Like, you saw that was like a really big thing. I remember, like,
make a wish
like hashtags
on 11/11.
Oh yeah, and it was like all these people were conscious of 11/11 at 11/11, and we're all conscious at the same time of the same thing, which is obviously nothing really came of that, or maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe that was also part of this emerging consciousness.
Your 11/11 wish didn't come true, Beau?
Did not. I wished for a pet bird, and I didn't get it.
I don't remember what I wished for.
Yeah.
I think it
comes up every day, twice a day, so, you know.
At that time in my life, I wasn't as, not superstitious, but I wasn't open to the ethereal realms.
Oh, really? Yeah.
as much as I am now. I would have said that, oh, this is bullshit.
What's the transfer for you? What was that time when you came from being a young kid into more of a conscious understanding of life, or maybe understanding what the ego was, or something like that? And obviously it wasn't just like one day you woke up and you're like, I think differently now. It was a process of a bunch of different things, but there might have been something prominent.
There's nothing super prominent. It's mostly, for me, it's just the experience of leaving my home and getting to explore thoughts for myself, you know, without being pushed to church and living under the wing of, when I lived in Tahoe, my father wasn't around when I was growing up in Tahoe. And so my father figure was my youth pastor, who like really took me under his wing. And every week I would meet with him on Wednesdays, and we would read books together, and we'd have discussions about these books. But so I was just very much wrapped up in that world of faith and having ideas not pushed on me, but that I just wanted to hear what these people in my life had to say, and it wasn't a period of exploration for me where I would see something and be like, this is interesting to me, this is worth pursuing, and then I would go and look at that. It was more of like, this is what I need to be focusing on. And so that experience of getting out and getting to actually explore things for myself rather than taking what I've been given as being the ultimate truth, that was really, that's the process I'm still going through right now, is this process of exploration and individuating and becoming my own person, instead of living in the patterns of my family or my community, And so it's just a period of exploration for me. I've just, as I've grown, become more interested, or not more interested, but I've had more of an ability to explore different ideas.
But was there
also when I took mushrooms for the first time?
You think that may have been something that was the catalyst for further exploration?
In some sense, but I don't think really. I think that was more of a step along the journey, because I had obviously had to get to a point where I allowed myself to undergo that exploration process of being open to trying like a psychedelic, previously that wouldn't have been something that I would have even considered, so I'd already started along the path of exploring other ideas that maybe I wouldn't have considered viable or interesting or worthwhile, stuff I would have thought was maybe a little too hippy dippy.
Really?
But so I think that was a part of it. It definitely helped me further down that path, but I wouldn't say it was it was a catalyst, but I don't think it was the main point. I think that, like, who's to say how anybody gets anywhere, I'm just on the journey,
Oh, for sure. And I didn't really expect you to have any like prominent moment, but I was just curious that I remember certain times in my life where I kind of grabbed onto a concept that I never really understood before, but I always kind of felt that I knew.
Right.
I had listened to Eckhart Tolle. Have you ever, with The Power of Now or A New Earth? You ever heard of that stuff?
I've heard his name. I haven't heard either of those titles, but
yeah, I don't know how to describe him. I guess he's an author first and then maybe a spiritual teacher or something like that. But he has a pretty stoic philosophy, I guess, if you really like dive into it. But I was listening to an audiobook and I was driving back from California to Minnesota, and and that's a perfect time to listen to an audiobook because you're stuck in it. You can really focus on it, which is nice, especially when you're just on cruise control.
Yes.
And he was talking about like the ego and what the ego was and how you're separate from the ego and the true self and who's observing and that kind of stuff. And it was like, fuck, man, like I never really consciously thought about that, but I kind of felt like that before, and then really putting that, and that really set me on a new path, a new philosophy. And then I delved down that for a while and then kind of heard somebody else. And then I moved a different direction, kind of moved, away from these different things. But yeah, I definitely feel like throughout my life, there's been certain different,
I can, now that you bring that up, I can think of one specific moment that I had that did definitely set me on a different way of thinking. I remember there's a UK rapper who I really like, Flip Tricks.
Okay.
If anybody's interested in rap music, I definitely recommend Flip Tricks.
Hashtag Flip Tricks.
He's a great rapper. But in one of his songs, or one of the outros to one of his albums, it was the album Patterns of Escapism. And I remember the outro to it, there's like a Alan Watts quote.
Oh yeah, I love Alan Watts.
I remember he's talking about circadian rhythms, and he's talking about how all animals and humans, we all find ourselves at the mercy of these natural processes. I remember I'd never considered anything like that, and his voice was just so beautiful. And so I remember I just heard that quote, and I just wanted to hear more of him speaking because it was so beautiful. And then I remember I went on a binge of listening to Alan Watts, and that that was probably the catalyst for me, was when I started listening to Alan Watts.
How old were you when you figured that out?
I was 18.
Yeah.
When I probably like almost 19. Mm-hmm. So not that long ago.
Yeah, but you're quite well read for your age, you know?
I've just always been a reader.
Yeah.
I remember, this is so lame. I remember in 4th grade, I remember watching, I forget what this movie is, but it's like one of my favorite movies of my childhood. Mm-hmm. And maybe you've seen it, maybe you can clue me in. There's like, it starts out, I'm pretty sure, as a live action movie, and there's a boy who's like in a library, and he somehow gets sucked into these stories. I remember he's like in Moby Dick, and he's in a couple of other books. I wish I knew the title.
Sounds familiar. I don't know.
This was like one of the most formative movies of my childhood, and I can't even remember the name of it. Uh-huh. But I remember I watched this probably in like 4th grade, and I remember after that I went to the library, and I'm like 8 or 9 or however old you are in like 4th grade, you know. I remember going up to the lady at the library asking for a copy of Moby Dick.
Really?
And she was like, "Do you want the abridged version?" I was like, "No, definitely not." And so I remember she showed me where I could find Moby Dick.
Wow.
I remember I checked it out, and I remember being in 4th grade, and it was recess time, and all the other kids went out to recess, and I asked my teacher if I could just stay in
and read
during
Moby
recess Dick. And read. Yeah, and I tried to read Moby Dick. I made it like maybe like 40 pages in, and it was it was too much for me at that time. Yeah. So I returned that, and I read Jason and the Argonauts instead.
Yeah.
But so ever since then, I've just been an avid reader. I just love to read so much.
Since that point.
Yeah, it's just,
that's really cool.
I mean, both my parents were teachers, and then I had my youth pastor who really pushed me to read, and not only to read, but then to think about what I've read and have discussions about it. And that was like the first time I remember ever really feeling like engaged, and just getting to be in a real conversation where you're working out ideas, and getting to have that experience when I was like 15 or 16. It was just really powerful. And also I was fatherless, and this was my only positive experiences that I'd ever had with another man. And so obviously I wanted to grasp onto that a little bit tighter. So that reinforced the idea that I need to read as much as I can so that I can pursue and keep having these experiences. So reading is something that I think is really, really important for sure.
That's very interesting. I was not a very good reader. I'm still not a very good reader, like out loud. I have a very difficult time like chopping the words together. You know?
I have a hard time reading out loud. I think reading out loud is definitely a difficult thing to do.
But I can read quite quickly if I'm just in my head, you know. But I never really started reading until I was like 21.
Wow.
Yeah, it was late. But I read a book called A History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. And it's like the title says, but it was very funny. But he talked about just all of these scientific discoveries and just how history was going and all this stuff. But it was so engaging and funny and interesting to listen to or read that I was like, man, if they just taught me like this in school, I would have read every book, you know. Or if it was like not dry and boring like all this you know, when you open up the math textbook, I'd always just look for the pictures. You know, I didn't give a shit about anything math. I just wanted to like read the little side captions with Will Smith's face in a little geometric shape pattern, you know, whatever. And so yeah, but it wasn't until very late, and now I'm fairly avid reader, but not, I mean, once a month do I finish a book. So I'm not like a cruise reader like a lot of those other people are.
And I think that a lot of it is also, like you said, when you're younger, like you're not, if you don't find something that's really enjoyable to you, you're not going to grasp onto it, you know, like when you're just being handed like, okay, here's Of Mice and Men, read this, you know, do a book report on it. And it's not something you chose. It doesn't, it may not resonate with you in that time in your life, you know. It just, I could understand why you wouldn't, but like why you wouldn't think reading, or why you wouldn't get deep into reading when that's all you've had. You know, I was lucky enough to read, to just grasp onto it and find something that I found really engaging at a young age, and getting to understand the value of reading. Whereas if I was just reading books that just reading assigned stuff, I wouldn't have had that same experience. You know?
Yeah, I hated the short stories. All of school was just a nightmare for me.
Well, did you read Harry Potter? That never hit you?
Harry Potter came out when I was in school, when I was in like 4th or 5th grade, and the movies hadn't yet come out, so we could still do those for book reports, I remember, which was nice. And I remember everyone loving Harry Potter, and I just wasn't a good enough reader. So it wasn't, like when it takes you, I don't remember, but 5 minutes to just get through a page.
Yeah.
It's not like you're living out the story. Like now when I read, you like come back all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, how long was I in there for? Like the Moby Dick thing where you feel like your like hair is wet when you come out. You know what I'm saying? But I never had anything like that when I was a kid, and my parents didn't read to me. So it was like, reading reading felt like work, and I'd rather just watch a movie, because then I don't have to do anything, or I'd go outside and play I was a very imaginative kid. I was like the last person to stop believing in Santa Claus, and I wanted to stretch out that imagination, and also I have really young siblings compared to they're 8 years younger and 5 years younger. So I got to play the role of imaginary. I would make up games and do all this. I was very into fantasy, and like today, like if I do play video games, it's not like shooter games or anything. It's like these lore-filled, gnomes and elves, and that stuff's so intriguing to me. It still is really intriguing to me. So now that I'm able to like actually enjoy reading, although I don't really like novels or really anything like I do really only read nonfiction, but it's still fun for me to go in there, dive into the book, and like come out later being like, oh yeah, because you see it like a movie in your head, and it's your movie. No one can make it for you, and that's what I love, is they're so individual. But all throughout school, it was just, unless it was about animals, I didn't give a fuck about anything in school, and none of it was. It was, even when we were like doing biology in school, it was just about blood cells, and it just wasn't. Nothing captivated me in school, and I hated being inside. So that was also another thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you didn't feel like school was really your environment?
It was the worst time of my life.
Really?
And this is what happened is, from kindergarten, I got summer, and I remember asking my mom, like, I don't have to go back to school. She's like, no, you get summer off. And I was I thought I never had to go to school again.
Right.
I thought I never had to go back there again.
That's it. I'm free.
Yeah. And then first grade, and it was like I fell behind very quickly. I remember in second grade, like not understanding the math, and they didn't pick up on it, because I either was really good at lying and cheating and making it look like I was keeping up, or they just didn't, they're just trying to push kids through. Yeah. So, and I remember like my last day of senior year in high school, I felt like the world owed me something, because I just sat through 12 years of prison. Yeah. And that's why I was like, I just like exploded with things that I wanted to do personally after high school. And from 18 to about 25, I did what I wanted to do, and nothing, a lot of it was very counterproductive in hindsight, but I just felt like I was finally free. It was so painful for me. I just hated every minute of it. The only thing I liked was like the interaction with other kids. Like I got to hang out with kids and socialize. The social aspect was really nice to me. And I got into theater when I was in the last couple of years of high school. And so that was nice, because that wasn't school. That was playing pretend. Yeah. So that was, I got to kind of live out.
It's escapism. You're not at school.
Exactly.
You're in whatever forest or.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I wasn't probably the greatest actor, but I got to good roles. So I really got to really engage, and it wasn't just like a tree in the background. I got to really be a part of it, which is fun. But and now after that book that I read, History of Nearly Everything, I looked at learning differently, and now that's probably why I'm so late back into school. But now school is very enjoyable, because I feel like I'm on top of it, and it's like I don't feel like I can't learn anything. I feel like I can learn. There's nothing you can put in front of me that if I didn't really sit down and really put my mind to it, that I couldn't actually learn.
Right, and I think that's one thing that's really important, is now you've come to it. Like I had that experience reading Jason the Argonauts young, where I said, oh, this is interesting. There's something here. I like this, And so it was something that I was doing because I wanted to do it, not that it was being forced upon me. And now you're being back in school. You've had that experience where you recognize the value of it, and it connects with you. And so you're able to push on like it's a part of you, not like something that's being forced on you. Whereas I think that a lot of kids that I see in college. Like me, when I first started college, they were just told, all right, you got to go to college, you know? And so they're not in it. They're not there for the learning, or they know on some level they're there to learn, but it's not real for them. They don't have any intrinsic motivation to be doing it, and so they don't get anything out of it. And so I think that it's great that you went and did your own thing between high school and college, because it let you come to it, and now you're in it, you know, and you can do it. And I think that's super, super valuable, because you're not just going through the motions, not really understanding what you're learning, not really caring. And I think that's where a lot of college students are, which is, I don't think that's beneficial for anyone, because when they graduate, unless they really settle into it at the end, they're probably not going to be super passionate about whatever it is that they're doing, or they're not really fully going to understand it. They're just taking the tests, passing the tests. And so they might have their degree, but they might not actually be very knowledgeable in the subject. So it's not going to be good for society, and it's not going to be good for them, because their heart isn't going to be in it, you know?
And for some reason in America, we don't really have the gap year is not as popular as it is in a lot of like European countries and other countries. Or maybe it is, I don't know.
No, I think you're right on with that.
Yeah.
I have no idea why we don't have that, because that's something that's so culturally reinforced in places like Australia, or in Europe,
England as well.
Yeah,
South Africa.
everybody goes on a gap year. I have no idea why we don't have that in the United States, because I think that's something it would be so immensely beneficial to young people. But we don't have it.
And that's essentially, I went on gap years and kind of took those off, but I was very lucky and fortunate to have a lot of certain circumstances come up where I could actually take advantage of not being in school, and not just going on a path where a lot of people would either quit high school. Actually, I had a really high turnout graduation in my high school, but in some areas where it's kind of like you just go right into the workforce.
Right.
That's not the same thing. The gap year is a specific time.
It's like a soul finding.
Absolutely.
Time,
and like we were talking about last time, a great way to do that if you don't have a lot of money is hiking trails.
Yeah.
That's one of the best ways to kind of take advantage of a gap year, because it takes, half a year, and, there's like that kind of thing. So kind of circling back to that, but, as far as I think you're right. It's like, I came to school rather than school coming to me. Like, it just like lined up that way, and I feel like with anything in life, when you come to the doorstep, you're coming with a different attitude, and that's going to make all the difference,
I think so.
So, yeah.
On that note, do we want to wrap it up? Call it a podcast?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. This has been another episode of the Transplants podcast. We'll see you next week.
Peace.